Hi, Shani. How are you?
Hey girl, I'm good.
How was your journey?
It was very easy coming from Woolwich.
Yeah.
Just a few stops, so really easy.
Oh my God. Do you know what? It's so interesting that you say Woolwich because we're going to talk about
Yes.
it. Because, so you actually, well, I mean, you live around Woolwich.
Yeah, basically, I live
Yeah.
in Woolwich. Yeah.
Okay, no, I didn't want to say
Yeah,
things
no,
that
it's
you
fine.
don't want to say.
No, it's a whole thing. Like I'm very much like I'm an author from Woolwich. It's part of my brand.
No, because I thought like it could be one of those things where you used to live in Woolwich and then
Okay. Yeah.
now
I'm still
not
there.
you're still in Woolwich.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. If you're watching, you can see that I've got a beautiful lady next to me. If you're listening, you can hear a very beautiful voice. Let me just introduce myself. Welcome to Chat with Nat. You guys know I'm still kind of figuring out the intro. But yes, Chat with Nat with me, Nat, where I have conversations with sometimes just myself, but sometimes with really special guests about different things. And I am so excited. Drum roll, please. I need to have like the when you listen to podcasts and they've got the things where they press and there's sounds. So just imagine that at home. So I'm so pleased to have Shani in the studio with me. Shani is an author. She's just published a debut short collection called For Such a Time as This, which we're going to talk about and you guys need to get. And she's a book influencer. She's the creator of the Naya Network. Yeah. You're the creator of the Orange Room, which we'll talk about. And basically, Shani sort of builds communities. She's a corporate girl, former corporate girls, and so much more. Hi, Shani.
Hey, girl.
Is there anything I've missed?
No, you covered everything.
Yeah.
Much, yeah.
I always think it's kind of weird. Like, it's like that question when people say, "What do you do?" Right. I always struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because people lead with, I work here or I work. So if someone were to ask you, how, you meet someone and they're like, oh, what do you do? What do you say?
I would say I'm a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was saying that before I had a book published.
Yeah.
I remember being on holiday in Cape Verde, just literally before the pandemic. And I was like on the beach, like writing. And there was like a few couples that I got talking to, and I was like, yeah, I'm a writer. I didn't mention anything about my 9 to 5. Yeah. So yeah,
I love that. I love that because I've always struggled with that because I can talk about what I do, but I should be careful because I'm still very much employed. Yeah, I feel you. But sometimes I don't want to lead with that. But I'll ask you a second question. What do you enjoy doing?
So I definitely enjoy writing. I love reading. I love bringing people together, building community. I think that's a really core part of who I am, and I've always been like that from as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
I love traveling. I love booking a flight. I love spending time with my family. I'm an auntie.
Yeah.
To nearly 6. Really close with like my friends. Love going to open mics.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have a lot of hobbies, I would say.
I love that. And I think you bring people together. I kind of get that vibe from you as well. Okay, so we're going to start with, the well, I was going to say like the boring bit. It's not the boring bit. It's the bit where I sort of, just ask you a little bit more questions just to get you to know you a little bit more. And for people that are not familiar with you. So as I mentioned before at the top, you've just brought out your book. Yay! Such a Time as This. I mean, look at the colours. Like, if you're listening, you just need to Google Shani Akilah and Google the book. I love the colours. So can we talk about how this happened? Yeah.
So how it happened was Hinge, the dating app. So in lockdown, the first one, my friends and I, a lot of us, we were on Hinge, the dating app.
Yeah.
And one of my friends was speaking to a guy who had the sickle cell trait like she did.
Right.
And at the same time, I was mentoring a young girl from my church who had sickle cell as a condition.
Yeah.
And I think those two elements gave me an idea for a story. And so that was the first story I'd kind of written.
Yeah.
And from that, it gave me inspiration to look at how Black millennials are navigating love and relationship during lockdown, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But as time went on, the scope kind of broadened to not just include friendship, but family relationships, platonic relationships, kind of workplace relationships. Very much inspired by kind of elements of seeds of truth from my own life. But yeah, like shout out to Hinge. I mean, I am not on the apps anymore, but yeah, it was a really, I think that was probably like the key for me. But I had been writing prior to that.
Okay.
So in like 2019,
right,
I would say that was kind of like the start of my writing journey and kind of working towards one day being a published author. So I was doing a number of kind of courses and I was reading, I was writing. But I got the inspiration for the collection during the pandemic.
Good. Okay, so so I know like there's people that are listening, and honestly this is for me as well, right? 'Cause I love writing. I've dabbled with writing articles and stuff, but I'm always interested in, you know, when you say like you did courses, like what courses did you do? And actually I know you mentioned like 2019 was sort of like the beginning of the journey, but I imagine, you know, you grew up in a you grew up in a house where books were a thing, with reading. So maybe if we can start like from there, and also just, I really want to know like what course you did, and just up until this is actually, you know, for such a time is actually out.
So I have grown up in a house like filled with literally thousands of books. So both my parents academics, and they instilled in me and my sisters from like a really young age the importance of education. So I was reading from a really young age, I was writing from a young age. So I kind of grew up in that kind of context. My parents are really intentional in kind of getting me books by Black authors. So one of my favourite childhood books is a book called So Much by Trish Cook. And yeah, that was like a really big part of my journey as a teenager, like reading Mallory Blackman, etc. And I loved English in school. Like I loved creative writing. I've always loved writing stories. But then I guess like, you know, you go to university, a lot of your time is spent writing non-fiction, like academic essays, dissertations. I wasn't really reading fiction when I was in university, just because like it's intense, like being in uni, like there's so much to do. But then when I finished, I kind of rediscovered, I guess, my love for fiction again. So me and my best friend Elizabeth, we started the Naya Network, which was a community for Black women to kind of meet other like-minded Black women in their early 20s. And as part of that, we had a book club where we read books exclusively by Black authors. And so that just kind of got me into the, I guess, the habit and the routine of reading Black authors, particularly contemporary authors. And then 2019, I was really like struggling at work. I think I was really feeling quite like burnt out, but not from doing too much work, but like from underwork and like not feeling like I felt like I was wasting my time essentially. I had that feeling a lot of time. I remember there were days I'd be like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I here? And so I remember in the summer of 2019, I kind of was feeling quite overwhelmed because I have a tendency to do a lot. So I kind of just was trying to focus on the things that bring me joy. And my sister, Rashida, was hosting a author Q&A with the author Bernadine Evaristo to discuss her book Girl, Woman, Other. And I went along just mainly to support Rashida, but I was really inspired by what Bernadine had to say, and it reminded me of how much I loved fiction, of how much I love writing. And we spoke afterwards, and I kind of said to her, like, what can I do to improve my craft as a writer? And she spoke about the importance of doing courses, and she told me that she was running a masterclass for under 25s in my local area of Woolwich for like a month. And I went along, and I remember in the first session I was like, okay, this is the thing that makes sense. Like,
you
this
felt
is
alive.
I felt like it was such a contrast to how I was feeling in my 9 to 5. And so Bernadine has been like super instrumental in my journey. We met a few weeks later, and she helped me to kind of map out a writing journey and a kind of plan essentially. And she recommended City Lit. So City Lit are an organisation that run a number of courses for adults, a number of writing courses. A lot of like prominent writers have kind of started their journey there. So I started off doing a short story course, because some advice that I'd got was that writing a short story or putting together a short story collection prepares you well to write longer form in terms of novels. So that was the first course that I did. So I did that, I think, in like September to November of 2019. So I was kind of in the mindset of like writing short stories, and I really love the form. So that was kind of the start of it, really.
And then how did you get like a publishing deal? Like how does that happen? I mean, I've heard the story, but I think others would be interested.
So I think my journey is quite different.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, I'm also a book influencer, and I think people know me first and foremost as that rather than being a writer. So in the pandemic, and I don't even know why I did this. I can't remember how I got the idea for it, but basically I colour coordinated my bookshelf.
Yeah.
According to the colours of the rainbow, and I had a display shelf of the authors that inspire me. So Jen Della Benson, Lizzie, Damalola, Blackburn, Bernadine was there, and also an author called Bolly Babalola, who had written a short story collection called Love in Colour. Yeah. And so that picture on Twitter went viral, and a lot of people kept like atting Bolly and was like, oh, let Bolly look at your book, look at your book. And I loved Love in Colour, and a lot of the kind of advice, feedback I'd had received over the past few years when I was writing my collection was that short stories don't sell well, publishers are really reluctant to take them on board, like turn it into a novel. And I didn't want to do that. I had a vision for an interconnected short story collection. And so to see that Bolu had done something similar was like really inspiring to me. So I think she like quote tweeted the tweet, and I thought, you know what, let me just slide into her DM. So I reached out to her and I was kind of like Bolly, like I was really inspired by Love and Colour. I loved it. It'd be great to speak about like the next stage in my journey if you'd be open to it in terms of applying to agents. And I often like live by this mantra of like, what's the worst that can happen? I had this experience when I was 16, 17 of wanting to apply to Oxford at my sixth form, and I had the grades. And basically my sixth form, they said I didn't have enough A stars to go at GCSE, which is really stupid. They just made it up because they wanted to have like 100% Oxford rate. And also racism, to be honest. Looking back, it was a real thing. And so I didn't apply for undergrad, and I felt a lot of regret about that. But ever since that moment, I've kind of been like, what's the worst that can happen? You should apply. The worst will happen, you get rejected. That's always, I always just try my luck. So yeah, Bolly, she got back to me, and we had a Zoom a few months later, and she introduced me to her agent, who then introduced me to a colleague who she thought would be a really good agent for me. So at that point, my manuscript wasn't even finished, my book wasn't finished, but they wanted to sign me, which is not usually how it happens. But yeah, I signed with Blake Friedman, signed with Sean. I was her first client in 2022 in January. Yeah. And then for like 9 months, we kind of worked on making the manuscript the best it could be. So that took about 9 months, and I wrote some more stories, and then Sean sent it out to editors at publishers to get a book deal in, I think, September. Yeah. And there was like, again, like loads of rejection in terms of that, because a lot of people were like, yeah, we love Shani's voice, but we're not sure about, you know, short stories, and we're not sure about the COVID pandemic element. Yeah. But it went out on another round of submission, and that's when I got the book deal.
That's amazing. And I was listening to an episode that you did, I forget the name of the podcast, where, because it's one of the questions I was going to ask you, because I know you had shared that you quit your corporate job to, you know, go into writing full time. But then when I listened to the episode, you say that you handed in your notice before you got the deal. Yeah. You know, I keep saying the God of Shani. I listened to it, I said, wait, what? I mean, can you talk about that? Yeah. I mean, you don't have to talk, you know, about like your work, but then just that move from, you know, working full time and saying, you know what, I'm gonna pursue this, and I'm gonna pursue my creative endeavors.
Yeah. So it's funny because I think a lot of people think I got the book deal then resigned.
I thought so. I was like, Shani got a bag, man.
So again, I think throughout maybe about 3 years, I was just feeling very unsettled at work. But I didn't really know kind of what to do, whether that was like leaving the industry, going corporate, not corporate, going into slightly different sector essentially. But then I'm just going to be real. I worked in the civil service. So the work-life balance was really good. So I was like, okay, if I go to the private sector, I might not have that same flexibility. And so I was kind of stuck. I was like, do I contract? And my background's project management. I was like, do I contract? I was really stuck, basically. And I remember there was one day where something happened at work and I was just like, what am I doing here? Like, it just felt, everything I was doing was just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And again, Bernadine being really instrumental in my journey. So, we're both from Woolwich.
Okay.
And there is a community centre called Woolwich Woolwich Common Community Centre. And they had opened a Bernadine Everest Library.
Right.
So she had donated like a number of books to the library. And I went along just to like support her. Was just taking some pictures for her, that kind of thing. Yeah. And she kept like mentioning me. So in I think 2021, I had another post that went viral on Twitter of me with like a stack of books I'd read. So I'd read like 40 books in the year.
Yeah.
And so she was talking about the importance of being, so in order to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader.
Yeah.
And I think she mentioned like my morning routine or something like that. And then she was like, oh, Shani, why didn't you come up on the stage? So basically like joined Bernadine, had a Q&A with her, with the audience, sharing my journey. And it just felt, again, I got that feeling of this feels right. This feels like what I'm meant to be doing. And at the same time, I was building a side hustle and it's going really well. I had like a number of clients and I kind of figured out how I could like replace my income. And I was talking to a mentor about it and I was like, I feel like I want to resign. And he was kind of saying like, now is a really good time to do it because you don't have major responsibilities. We're still living at home, didn't have a mortgage, don't have any kids. And he was like, if it doesn't work out, you still have your skill set to fall back on. And so he was just kind of encouraging me. And then I remember the next morning I kind of woke up and I was like praying and there was a scripture that really resonates with me in First Chronicles that talks about like be very strong and courageous and do the work. And that really resonated with me, but I was like, God, I feel like I need like a clearer sign. So this is around like 5 a.m. I went to bed again, woke up around 6:30 and then I received a letter that I'd written to myself a year ago. So I'm a big fan of this website called futureme.com. You've already seen me tweet about it. And then basically I'd written a letter a year ago and I was like, Shani, you can't continue to do this to yourself. If what you like, you can do it. If what you want to do doesn't exist, make it up. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is the sign that I need. So I drafted spoke to like some trusted advisors, spoke to my friends, drafted my resignation letter that weekend and handed it in on Monday.
Oh my goodness. And
literally exactly a month later, I got a book deal.
Did your agents know that you were going to quit work? I mean, I guess...
I don't know whether I probably mentioned it to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you have a good feeling? Like, did you kind of think, okay, someone's going to pick it up, the deal's going to happen?
So when I had handed in the resignation letter, it had just been submitted to like a lot of the big publishers. And it was really disheartening because I felt like I was so close, but like so far away. And I remember a mentor said to me, like, all you need is one yes. And so I think I kind of like held that in my heart, but I don't know, I kind of really wasn't really thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because like you hear these stories of people getting book deals in like 24 hours and stuff like this. And I was like, this is taking like a long time. But some of my author friends were like, no, it's normal. Like editors need time to like read the book.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I wasn't really thinking about it. And then I remember I was like working. I think I was like in a meeting and I got a message from my agent. And she was like, I have some news. And she put some eye emojis.
Ooh!
And I was like, oh my God. I was like, she was like, are you free to talk at 12? And I was like, no, I have a meeting, but I can do one and we talk at 1. And so I basically received a preempt, which is basically when a publisher offers you like a large advance to kind of take the book off the table. So another publisher don't get it.
Yeah.
And so I was really happy with the deal. Like I was really happy. They wanted me to be their lead title for the year.
Wow.
And me and my sisters were actually going to go out to celebrate.
Yeah.
But then I was in another meeting later on that day and I started to get a headache. My throat was feeling weird. Yeah. I did a COVID test. I got COVID.
Oh, no.
Like the second time.
Yeah.
And so I was just in bed. I was just in bed. And then I got another text from my agent saying, you've received another preempt.
Shani!
And it was an even better preempt. It was another preempt, and it was an even better deal. Like, so it was with One World. They had published some of my favorite Black authors, and they wanted me to be the super lead title.
What's the difference between lead title and super lead?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm not
right,
sure,
okay, yeah.
But either basically,
yeah.
If you're a lead title, super lead title, they'll
Yeah.
put a lot of their marketing into your
Right.
book. Your book will be like their main
Yeah.
title for that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened.
This is amazing. I love it. Do you know, I'm so interested in the process, but I know, you know, time. So I'll delve into the actual book, because we could talk forever, because you know me, I'm like, I need to take notes. Like, I need to touch, you know, the hem of Shani's garments, like this anointing comes to me. But I think what I'll do, I'll sorry, I've got notes. I love that. So, and I'll be looking at my phone as well, so just bear with me. But so I think I'll do it by themes. Okay, cool. Right, because I think if we go by each story, but okay. So I think one theme that I wanted to talk about, which kind of is throughout the book, is, I guess you pay a lot of homage to your background, to the Windrush generation, to your Caribbean roots, to your Christian roots. There's a clear sort of like legacy that you have that sort of comes through the books, just in terms of just the names and the Caribbean stories. And I think, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, there's been sort of like a great burst of, you know, African authors, and it's kind of felt. I was reading the book and I was like, I feel like this is probably the first time in a long while that Caribbean characters or second generation Caribbeans are really like at the fore. So maybe if you can talk to me about, you know, why that was important, and you know, I guess why you think it's important to kind of tell these stories and the role that you want to play in sort of like, you know, just capturing this moment. No,
I think you're definitely right. So I think there are a lot more Black authors now in the UK, but I think it's just a numbers game. I think largely a lot of them are predominantly West African authors. And I think as a writer, I wanted to contribute to the literature alternative narratives. So you mentioned faith. I think often when I've seen portrayals of faith in books, it's been from a very like negative perspective, or you've got Christian characters that are just weird, like very frumpy, just really weird. And I'm a Christian, like a lot of my friends are Christians, and they're like the coolest people I know. And so I wanted to really like bring that to my storytelling. I think the book is very much an extension of me, and so I've brought to the book things that are important in terms of my identity. So not just faith, but you know, being Caribbean, being third generation, you know, community, like South London, Woolwich. And I think, I mean, it wasn't, I guess looking back on it, it wasn't like, it was more like a subconscious thing, but I was just writing my truth essentially. But I guess looking back on it, I guess I was deliberate in a sense of I wanted to show elements of South London that I feel like are not represented in contemporary Black British literature. So there's quite a few books that make reference like Peckham and Brixton, and I've never read a book that mentions Woolwich. And one of my friends pointed out to me that on the very first page of the collection I mentioned Woolwich Arsenal. So I really wanted to like you know, showcase other people's stories and make people feel seen. And loads of people have said to me, like, from my area, like, I've never read a book before where I felt so seen and so represented. And I think that was really important to me, because I think as a reader, I really love stories where I feel I can relate to them. And so I wanted to give that to my readers as well.
No, and I love that. And so so in the book, there's a chapter on Reggie, which I love. And I mean, there's two really, and there's an interconnectedness there. And I just wanted to, because I think the way you tell the story, we've got this strong character who lost his wife sort of very early on, obviously remarried, but clearly was a strong present father, you know, raised his children, but has managed to experience the dream of going back home, right? And actually being in Jamaica. And I think for me, that was very interesting being Zimbabwean. So I guess we're like a new immigrant group, really, who like 20-30 years max. And you start having those thoughts about, you know, will people actually go home? You know, like older people in our family, society, sort of talking about. And it was like interesting sort of seeing Reggie being able to go home, and then juxtapose that with Vivian, who's, you know, she's experienced tragedy in her own way with the son passing away. Reggie's also experienced tragedy, and, you know, they've had interesting experiences here. But Vivian is here, and you can kind of tell that she's sad that Reggie's, like when Rihanna sort of tells her that Reggie's passed on. Obviously, she's sad that, okay, he's passed on. But, you know, there's this like, yeah, this is life. But you can kind of tell there's a sense of, oh, yeah, he managed to go back home, and I'm still here. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if we can sort of, it's not a question, but maybe if we can kind of reflect on that, on the idea of going back home, or really making, you know, England like home. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I guess that wasn't really at the forefront of my mind when I was writing it. So it's really, I think this is why it's amazing to write a book and put it out into the world, because people bring to it, you know, their own experiences of life and stuff. But I guess both characters were inspired by my grandparents. So my granddad had lived in, I mean, the general Windrush story is that people came to the UK, they were only planning on staying for like 4 or 5 years to save, work, and then return home. And a lot of people did, but a lot of people didn't. Or they stayed longer than they planned to. So my granddad ended up staying in the UK for like 40 years. And he went back when I was 3. So all of my I don't have any memories of him being in the UK. All of my memories are of him in Jamaica. Whereas my grandmother, on my dad's side, their experience, they didn't go back. And so I guess I'm really a big fan of intergenerational relationships, intergenerational stories. A lot of those relationships in terms of, say, Vivian and Rihanna, and then Reggie and Shana, they're inspired by my personal relationships that I have with my grandparents. So I'm always like, I think my gran is literally one of my closest friends. I'm always chatting to her about, you know, my dating chronicles. So it's a made up story, but I think that element is quite real. But yeah, I think I just wanted to pay homage to that generation and just how much they did for us in terms of, I mean, I'm 3rd generation, but you know, 2nd generation as well, and the sacrifices that they made so that we could have a better future. Like, I don't think I've dedicated my book to my grandparents because I'm sure when they came here, they never would have thought maybe that, you know, one day someone in their lineage would have a book, you know, in Waterstones, on Amazon, all these things. And so I hold them really close in my heart, and I really wanted to honour them by kind of telling their stories as well. And it's definitely a theme in terms of future like projects I want to work on, and just the kind of intergenerational elements. But also from like a 3rd generation, 2nd generation perspective as well, like our connections with home. So I was born in England, London. My connection with Jamaica is a bit different. It's like that I mentioned the poem Dice with Blues. So here you are, too foreign for home, too foreign for here, never enough for both. And I feel like a lot of us kind of have that ambivalent relationship with the UK, but also back home. And then you have things like, you know, like the riots, and it's like, okay, they don't want us here, but then at home they don't really want us either. So it's just, it's long. Basically.
No. It's so beautiful, and like I say, for me, being in a sort of different, I guess, position, and being in a different immigrant group, I think it's really important to understand the stories of pioneering immigrant groups. So true. And obviously just the fact that if you look at the UK, so I didn't know this because I didn't do like my primary and secondary school in the UK. Okay. I didn't realise that they don't teach colonialism here. So colonization, my English bundles. But yeah, so I think those stories are really, really, really important. And you do that well, and you talk about Rihanna talking to Vivian about, you know, all the dates and everything. I think another theme which I love, and we've touched on this, is Hinge. I mean, Hinge needs to sponsor you, Shani.
I've been meaning to email them. I need to get in touch with them for sure. If you're listening, Hinge, hit me up.
I think there's the other dating app that does like I've seen
Bumble.
Yeah, that does series and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I've seen Tolly from the Receipts.
Okay, I'll check that out.
So you need to reach out to Hinge and say, you know, I can do like a love series.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Black History Month.
Yeah, girl, Black Employment Month is coming.
No, so I love that, and I guess I'll merge the two themes, which is Hinge, dating, love, and the pandemic, right? So what I love is just the way you tell the stories, and I think for me, because I'm probably like 9-10 years older than you, so you guys are like a slightly.
You never know.
So you guys are like
Black don't crack.
You guys are like a slightly younger generation, but it's interesting to see like the stories are familiar in a way. So we've got Gabby and Jonathan. Can I confess?
Okay.
I actually cried.
Oh my God.
When I read Good Goodbye.
Aww.
And God, maybe if you tell me like what the inspiration, and I'll explain to you why it touched me so much. But yeah, so Gabby, who's like, you know, the bridesmaid, and Jonathan, yeah, what was the inspiration? And I really want to, without giving too much away, because in the last chapter we see them in the same setting. Right, so talk to me about that. What's happening there?
So I guess the inspiration for the story, so in Good Goodbye, Gabby is a bridesmaid 6 times in a year, and I exaggerated it, but that was basically me. A lot of my friends got married. I think I ended up, so I wrote that story in 2021. By the end of, so I mentioned Gabby had been a bridesmaid 6 times. I think when I had written, had been a bridesmaid 3 times. But by the end of 2022, I'd been a bridesmaid 6 times. You spoke. Yeah. So I basically I manifested it. And it was a really intense period. I think we'd been, you know, inside for so long, and then it's like everyone was getting married. It was just really intense. So I think that was generally the inspiration. But I guess I kind of wanted to speak to, I don't know, like what if situations. I think I really like writing those. I really
no, you broke my heart. You broke my heart. But you know, I'm a lover, I'm a believer. Like the end kind of gave me hope.
What the
because
end
they
of
were in the same setting.
Okay, interesting.
They were at Naya's birthday.
Yeah,
and
but they didn't speak to each other though. Listen,
they were together because I know some people like, you won't catch me, so you know, without giving too much away, Good Goodbye. I love it because it's like you said, it reminded me of Insecure for some reason. Just the way you told it.
I love it.
Yeah, just the way you told it, because it's so real, right? You know, how does it happen that, you know, 2 people who need to be having honest and open conversations and seeing, you know, what if, you know, one character like misremembers the phone number and the other, like it's I cried because I was just like, oh man, like, anyway, let me not give too much away, but I did. So I love that. And then I'll skip timelines, but still kind of sticking with the sort of love theme. Mima, right?
Home girl,
my girl Mima, but I know like it's not about Mima. Oh, maybe you can tell me. Maybe it is.
Do you know what? So there are a lot of Caribbean characters in the book, but I think in the same way the book is an extension of my life. I have Caribbean friends, but just given numbers, I have a lot of West African friends. So there are characters that are Nigerian, Ghanaian, but I also wanted to bring the diversity of the African diaspora. Yeah. And so I really wanted to have a character from like Southern and East Africa.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking about names, and then I know Mima, and I don't know, the name just it worked. It worked. So I was like, yeah.
And you know, Mima's name is unique.
Really?
Yeah, because I think it's like her two parents. Like,
no way.
First names brought together.
Wow.
No, you need to speak. Mima, please forgive me if I'm like, but she shared this on an episode that we did. But so obviously I was kind of drawn to the character, right. and obviously she kept coming up here and there, and then when you back to the office,
yeah,
I was like, what workplace is this? Like, no, Shani, like, what workplace is this? Where, you know, after the pandemic, going back to the office, and then there is this fine guy. Like, you have lunch, then you're going to Deptford, like after work. No, Shani, please, has this been your work experience?
Listen, I wrote that story, or I had the idea for the story when I went back to the office. But that did not happen to me.
I was like, are we totally like having different experiences? Because I'm like, that's never happened to me.
That was a completely made up scenario.
No, but I loved it. I love it because and at the end I was thinking, you know what you said. Well, English bundles, guys. English is not my first language. But you know, at the end they had this great conversation, and they're like, he's like, I'm gonna message you, and I'm thinking, but you didn't get each other's names. And then I love the fact that, you know, she was like, wait, so I love that you brought that. And then it's a short trip to Tesco. Love that, because you talk about just the, you know, the daily people that you bump into, and, you know, that you see on your way to work, in the canteen or whatever, that those relationships that aren't really real relationships, but actually they are part of your life that were disrupted during the pandemic, right? And I was interested because Nisi, right? So, guys, you need to read the book, but hopefully, you know, you can relate to this even if you haven't read the book, right? So, like, you know, relate to after the pandemic, going back to familiar spaces, and then seeing the person, you know, who, you know, worked in the canteen at work, and just being relieved that, oh my God, like, you're still here, like, you're still working, or seeing the guy at Tesco as in the book. But I thought it was interesting because the ending, you're like, oh, this was the beginning of a great journey for them both. I was like, what happened? Because I was like, Nisi came out and she was with someone, but then I don't know, maybe this is like the romantic believer in me, because I was like, is this something
no. To get for them both? Yeah. No. So okay. I was more speaking of the beauty in their friendship. Yeah. But I can understand why that would be a bit ambiguous.
No. I love that. Yeah. I love that. Okay, so, oh my God, I wish we had more time, but so we'll go back to the pandemic theme, right? 2020, big year. The year of the Black Squares. If people Black remember. Unfortunately, George Floyd. And there's a there's a book, there's a story, which, you know, I don't know if it's my favorite, like, yeah, I think it's my favorite so far. It kind of changed between that and Goodbye, for such a time as this, where the character Naya, who talks about experiencing, I mean, first of all, the pandemic itself, and some of the horrific things that happened in the pandemic. I had actually forgotten that there was a lady who was working at a train station who was spat at and got COVID and passed away. Yeah. Like, literally, it's only when I was reading your book, I was like, oh my goodness, yes, that happened. And, you know, the fact that a lot of Black and brown people worked as key workers, as nurses, as bus drivers, so they didn't have the you know, comfortability of working from home, and not being exposed to everything that was going on. So Naya's character really I think sort of portrays some of the anxiety that people were feeling, and then you talk about experiencing all of that, but then interacting with work, right? Where everyone's life, you know, people have moved to Cornwall, you know, to their summer homes, and you know, like, and you know, you're seeing like the big living rooms like via Zoom or whatever you're using, and just the disconnect that was there. And you know, fast forward, we have the George Floyd 8 minutes 46 horrific video, and then all of a sudden there's this I think a lot of organizations, if you're listening to this, you probably will remember that a lot of organizations and, you know, different places were very much like, okay, how can we be an ally? You know, okay, what does Black Lives Matter mean? How can we exactly, how can we be anti-racist? How can we be more diverse? It was like the growth of the diversity and inclusion sort of sector. And your character talks about that and talks about just that experience. I'll leave it open to you to just talk about the inspiration and I guess what you were trying to portray in terms of just the experience of people who were working during the pandemic and some of the labor that they had to do for their organizations in the name of furthering diversity and inclusion.
So I think, as I mentioned before, like a lot of the stories are inspired by like seeds of truth from my own life. But I think for such a time as this, it's probably like 80% real life. I've changed some things just to make it, ultimately it's fiction, you know? But yeah, it was inspired by a very real situation I went through in the workplace at the height of Black Lives Matter, height of COVID, where, you know, I was being very outspoken in the workplace about how COVID was affecting Black and ethnic minority people. When George Floyd was murdered, that really impacted me and, you know, led to me writing a blog that went viral in the organisation, to then being headhunted to lead an anti-racism programme, and then just the backlash from that, essentially, which resulted in me not getting the role that I created from scratch. So it was very traumatic, and I don't think I realised how much of an impact it had on me until I'd written that story. So that was 2020. I wrote the story in 2021, and that year I'd read a book by an author called Caleb Azuma Nelson called Open Water, and it's written in the second person. So rather than he, she, or I, it's using you. So you switch on the news, you cry, you feel pain that overwhelms you. I think I found it a really expressive, poetic, but also therapeutic way to write. And so I think writing that story was a real act of like, therapy for me. And so I think I wrote it for me. But also now the book's out in the world, I realised that so many Black women, Black people just generally have been through similar experiences. Not even outside of like Black Lives Matter, they have been through, you know, situations where they've been going for a role, they're doing it and then they don't get promoted or go to someone else. Like it's a very common experience. But then I think for non-Black people, it's been really powerful reading that because it's like a teaching tool. And I think even with everything happening with like the race riots, I've had like white friends reach out to me to check in on me as a result of reading my book. Do you know what I mean? Just to see how I'm doing, which I really appreciated. And so, I think it's really interesting because, like I said, my original plan for the collection was exploring love and relationships. But I went through that and I was like, okay, I'd love to include this. And actually the title, I think, works so well for the whole collection because prior to this title, the working title was Love in the Time of Corona, which makes you cringe. But also, I think it centres the pandemic too much and the pandemic is more of a backdrop. So, very much inspired by real life events. But I think I found that when I'm most honest and vulnerable in my writing, it produces stories that people can really resonate with.
No, I love that. And you know, you say that there's probably like 80% truth to that story, but I guess, I mean, it's easier sort of said now, sort of like with 2020 vision or hindsight. But that had to happen to make your story.
It's the reason
you know
it's the reason I got a book deal.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It reminds me of that scripture in Genesis about like you meant it for evil, but God turned it around for good. That is literally what happened.
All things work together for good
literally.
for those who love the Lord. Honestly. Like when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, like this had to happen. And I love that you talk about Naya's character and the parents saying, do you know, remember who you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, this isn't everything that's happening. And I just think that's beautiful. And oh my God, time. I'll just quickly sort of touch on this. I guess another theme, which kind of came out when I attended your book launch at Waterstones, is just the gentleness that you write your male characters. Thinking of David, Jonathan, Reggie, Naya's parents, Naya's dad. And yeah, I just, did you were intentional about that? Or is it just one of those things that it's your experience and then people have reflected on it and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so at Waterstones, for Collar, she said that about how I write male characters really well with care, and she's mentioned it a few times, but I never realised I was doing that. I think I was just writing from what I knew to be true of men in my life. But I realise now actually it's quite powerful because it does subvert a lot of narratives about black men.
It's so powerful, and I think it sort of touches on I guess the theme of, you know, you are who you are because of other people. Like, so if you think about David, and if you think about Shana, and I think there's a part in the Back to Ghana, is it Back to Ghana?
Ghana in December.
Ghana in December story, that exchange with David and Jonathan, where they kind of talk about their fathers. And then you start to think, oh, okay, so what's happening with David's relationship and the way that he's relating, and I guess kind of similar with Gabby and Jonathan. I don't know what it means like for David and Shana, but they are at Naya's party at the end together. Well, in the same room. They also didn't speak. But Jonathan, but yeah. So I think it's interesting that you say like it kind of came out after, but I guess it shows that the healthy relationships that you have around you, and it's not like, oh, men are trash, and I absolutely love that. And I guess another sort of big character in the book is the group chat. Like, the group chat is the thing. Talk to me about that.
So again, it's just a reflection of my life. Like, I am, over the years, I have made a number of group chats, and I just think it's a big part of like contemporary, like, I was gonna say Black British culture, but it's even beyond that. Everyone has a group chat now, and it's, I think particularly in the pandemic, it was a really safe space for a lot of people. Us kind of not having that kind of in-person interaction, it was really really important. And just online spaces, I mentioned Clubhouse in Ghana in December. I've made so many friends on Twitter like over the past few years who I've only met in person very recently. So I kind of wanted to speak to kind of the importance of digital safe spaces and how they can really add to our relationships and our lives.
I love that. So I have a sort of working theory about group chat. I think they keep friendships going. Let me explain. I think sometimes it's, I don't know, maybe it's a bad thing, but I feel, so there's a group chat that I've recently resurrected with some of my friends that I've reconnected with. And the group chat is popping, right? And I think to myself, oh my God, like, this group chat has changed everything, because we've all been trying to reconnect sort of other the pandemic, but the one-to-one just, I think, just hadn't worked as well. I don't know, is that crazy, or does that sound familiar to you?
I think group chats are a really important part of our friendships now. It's like, I think the face-to-face it's still really important.
Yeah.
But I think it does add, for sure.
Yeah. That camaraderie and there's so much more that I can talk about with the book. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I just love the way you told the stories. I loved these beautiful, handsome characters that you put, and it's just so relatable, right? Just think about, getting off the DLR in Canning Town and getting on the Jubilee line. I just love the way you told the stories. And I guess maybe kind of like in closing about the book, is there anything that we haven't touched on that, you really wanted people to sort of take from the book? Yeah.
So I think the book deals with like a lot of difficult, challenging themes. So sickle cell and dating, as you mentioned. Endometriosis and being a Black woman, like Black male mental health, loss, grief, heartache, the one that got away. But I think ultimately I wanted to show like the beauty that's found in friendship, the beauty that's found in community, and that despite life's hardships, you can still find joy in the day-to-day. And so I think that's kind of why I ended the book the way that I did.
Yeah.
With food, with fellowship, with music, with games, with laughter.
Yeah.
And again, that's very much reflective of my life, of having gone through like some really difficult times, but ultimately you still have pockets of joy.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to remind, I guess, my readers of that.
Yeah. No, I love it. And yeah, you probably get this question a lot in terms of sort of what next. I hope more writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you were to make a novel out of one of the stories, which one would you want to expand on?
I think Goodbye.
Yeah. It's very insecure, like, because we oh my God, like, I would love that.
But also Ghana in December, I think that'd be really cool, like with parts set in Ghana and like his childhood and his interactions. I'm not even gonna say, I'm gonna stop there.
Wait, are you already working on something?
Yes, I am. I am.
Based on the stories?
I'm working on a lot of different things, like but I'm gonna leave it there.
No, give us something.
So I'm working on a novel. So completely different characters.
Right.
But I'm also have really enjoyed these characters. So I have a few ideas in the pipeline, shall we say?
Please.
Yeah.
Would you like to see these characters on screen or
theatre? I would love to see them on screen. I'd love to see them on screen. They're also in their like mid to early 20s.
Yeah.
So mid to late 20s. So seeing them later in life could be interesting.
There's a lot that can happen there. And after this I want to talk to you about one of the characters that I related to. Okay. But oh my God, Shani, that's been so interesting. And oh gosh, I wish we had more time, because I could talk forever. But I just want to say thank you for this.
Thank you.
It's such a great book. It's such a great read. It is a collection of short stories, but I think you get more if you read all of them, because they're very interconnected. There is a larger story sort of across, which we've talked about the themes. I just think what you've done is brilliant. I'm happy you've taken time to be with us, because listener, dear reader, gentle reader, like Shani, listen, next year, like Shani will be like hard to book. Like I was like, listen, I have to pin this down, because the way this girl is going, like it'll be. But thank you so much. There is something that I wanted to say. Oh gosh, I'm getting old. Oh no, I wanted to say, just to give you a chance to sort of share where people can find you, where they can buy the book.
So in terms of kind of keeping up with my journey, like following me on socials is probably the best thing to do. So @_Shani Akilah on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, X. I'm still calling it Twitter.
Oh no, it's Twitter, please.
Please. Yeah. I also have a website,
Yeah.
shaniakilah.com. And in terms of where you can buy for such a time as this, Amazon, we are in the month of August. I don't know whether I can say that.
It will come out September.
Okay, so that's irrelevant. So maybe we could edit that part
Oh
out.
no, that's fine.
But no, just because it's on Kindle deal at the moment for the month of August, 99p.
Oh,
yeah, so
okay.
if you want to get it on Kindle. But yeah, the book's on Amazon.
Yeah.
The book is on Waterstones, and support your local independent bookshop as well. Afori Books are the only black-owned, black author-only bookshop in the whole UK.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of them. Roundtable Books, also a diverse bookshop in Brixton.
Yeah.
A really lovely bookshop. Seven Oaks Bookshop is also another black-owned one.
Oh, fantastic. So we've got some international listeners like America, Canada, and all that. Is it available outside? Is it not?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Really?
Like, people keep messaging me, but
the
US needs to give you a book deal. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
They didn't want me.
What can they do? Like, if they want to, can readers like put pressure on? I don't know.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Is there anything that we can do?
I've talked to my agent about that.
Yeah, because literally, I've got two people in mind that I was gonna send the book to, but I was gonna do it via Amazon, but I don't know if it's possible. Like, it's one in Canada, one in America.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
no, that's fine. Yeah. So that needs to happen in South Africa as well. Yeah.
Well, it's UK and Commonwealth territories.
Okay. So, so if you're listening, just search online and see if you can find it. Yeah. But, if you're listening like in 2025, search again because things may have changed, exactly. Right?
Yeah.
And we're going to get this book out there. Yeah. And, Shani, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that I've missed?
No, thank you. It was a really wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
No. You're so welcome. So guys, this has been Shani. And this is me, Nat, Chat with Nat. Just make sure, see, I did say at the beginning, I'm still kind of getting this, trying to like, oh my God, my English bundles are completely gone.
It's fine. You got it.
Yeah, I'm still kind of because I'm now doing the podcast solo, so I'm trying. But yeah, follow me, Chat with Nat Show on Instagram, at Malaika Diva on Twitter, and let me know what you guys think. If you've got the book, let me know, and we'll have like more conversations about the book online. Yeah.
Amazing.
So, bye guys.
Take care. See ya. Thank you.